Okay, here's a situation that really caught my eye. We're looking at a legal decision out of Pakistan. Seems pretty standard at first glance, involves a second marriage.
Right.
But then you look closer and, well, the court ends up questioning if it even had the right to hear the case to begin with. It's a fascinating twist.
It really is. And what's so interesting here isn't just the family drama aspect, but the legal mechanics underneath. How the rules and procedures work, or in this case, maybe didn't work as expected. We're diving into a specific judgment from the Lahore High Court for those tracking, and it takes apart a case under the Muslim Family Laws Ordinance.
So for this deep dive, think of your mission, if you will, as getting to grips with why the High Court basically threw out the lower court's ruling. We'll hit the key points. Second marriage without permission, sure, but also the timing when the complaint was made and this critical issue of jurisdiction, which court is actually allowed to decide.
Exactly. And our guide through all this is the High Court judgment itself.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What was the core issue that kicked this all off?
All right, so the central fact is this. A man named Mohammed Waqas Gill, he married a second time, Mens KS, back in September 2015.
Okay.
Now, at that exact moment, he was still married to his first wife, Rifat Awan. And crucially, he hadn't gotten the official permission needed for that second marriage.
Ah, right. And that's required by law.
Yes, specifically, Section 65B of the Muslim Family Laws Ordinance, the 1961 law, but with the Punjab amendments from 2015 factored in. Marrying again without that permission is, on the face of it, an offense.
Seems straightforward enough, but you mentioned timing was a big deal here.
Huge deal. Here's the thing. Rifat Awan, the first wife, she didn't actually file her complaint about this second marriage until April 2019.
Wait, 2019? The marriage was in 2015.
That's right. Almost 3.5 years later.
Wow, okay. It's quite a delay.
It is. And get this, by the time she filed that complaint in April 2019, she and Mohammed Waqas Gill were already divorced. The judgment lays it out. The divorce was pronounced in December 2018. It became legally effective in March 2019. There were documents, certificates from the Arbitration Council, the whole thing, all before she lodged the complaint.
So she complained about the illegal second marriage only after the first marriage had ended.
Exactly. And the High Court definitely picked up on this. The judgment mentions the court observing potential malafide. That's legal speak for bad faith, basically.
Because of the delay and the fact the complaint came post-divorce.
Precisely. It raised questions, about what the real motive was behind bringing the complaint forward at that specific, very late point in time.
Was there any other context around her knowing earlier?
Well, yes. The judgment notes that Mohammed Waqas Gill, the petitioner, had presented evidence back in the initial trial court, specifically photographs.
Photographs of what?
Allegedly showing members of Rifat Awan's own family attending the second wedding ceremony back in 2015.
Oh, interesting. So that would suggest she, or at least her family, knew about it long before 2019.
That was certainly the argument being made, suggesting awareness much earlier than the official complaint date.
Okay, so the timing is suspicious. There's maybe evidence of earlier knowledge. But you said the main reason the High Court overturned things was different.
That's right. All that background is important context. But the judgment hinges on something even more fundamental, a real fatal flaw, as they put it. It's about the court itself.
The court that first heard the case.
Exactly. The initial trial took place in the Court of Magistrates, Section 30.
That's not the right court.
According to the High Court, and the law cited, no. The judgment points directly to Section 20, subsection 3 of the Family Courts Act from 1964.
Okay, what does that say?
It explicitly states that for offenses under the Muslim Family Laws Ordinance, like marrying again without permission, only a family court can take cognizance, meaning only a family court has the authority to hear the case.
So not just any magistrate court?
Correct. It has to be a designated family court, especially when the complaint comes from an aggrieved party, like the first wife here. Think of it like you wouldn't take a complex corporate merger case to small claims court, right? There are specialized courts for specific things.
Gotcha. So the Magistrate Section 30 wasn't acting as a family court. How did they know?
Well, the High Court looked at the actual records. The judgment specifically mentions that things like the header on the trial court's judgment, the way evidence was recorded, the interim orders, none of them had the stamp of a judge family court.
So, like, literally the paperwork didn't identify it as a family court proceeding.
Essentially, yes. It looked on paper like a standard magistrate court proceeding, not one operating under the specific authority granted to family courts for these types of cases. It lacked the proper legal designation, you could say.
That seems like a major oversight.
It is, from a legal standpoint. The High Court reinforced this by citing a core legal principle. When the law required doing things in a particular manner, such things have to be done in that manner, and all other modes stand excluded.
Meaning, if the law says use court A, you can't just decide to use court B instead.
Exactly. You have to follow the prescribed path. They even cited a previous case where a similar issue about using the correct legal forum was decisive.
Did any laws change around this?
Yes, and the court addressed that too. The Punjab Family Court Amendment Act of 2015 actually designated family courts to also act as judicial magistrates of the first class, but specifically for the purpose of trying these Muslim family laws ordinance offenses.
Ah, so a family court could act like a magistrate for these cases.
It could, yes. The power was vested in the family court, acting in that specific magisterial capacity for these particular offenses. But the key finding here was that the record didn't show the magistrate, Section 30, was acting under that specific family court authority. It just appeared to be acting as a regular magistrate.
Okay, so because the first court wasn't technically the right kind of court or acting in the right capacity, what does that mean legally?
It leads to a concept called coram non judice.
Coram non judice.
Yeah, it basically means the case wasn't heard before a judge who had the proper legal authority or jurisdiction to hear it.
And the consequence of that is?
The entire trial, everything that happened in that first court, is considered a nullity. It's legally void, invalid from the very beginning.
Wow. So it doesn't matter what evidence was presented or what the initial verdict was if the court itself lacked jurisdiction.
Fundamentally, yes. Jurisdiction is foundational. The High Court even connected this back to the Constitution of Pakistan, Article 175(2), which says courts only have the jurisdiction given to them by the Constitution or by law. They can't just assume power they haven't been granted.
So if a court acts outside its defined powers, its actions just don't count legally.
That's the principle. It's a cornerstone of ensuring the legal system operates within its established boundaries.
Okay, so putting it all together, what was the final decision from the Lahore High Court in this specific case?
Given that fatal jurisdictional flaw, the High Court allowed Mohammed Waqas Gill's criminal revision petition, meaning they overturned the lower court's decisions. Both the initial conviction by the magistrate Section 30 and the decision by the additional sessions judge, who had later upheld that conviction, were set aside.
And what happened to Mohammed Waqas Gill himself?
He was formally acquitted of the charge related to the second marriage without permission, and his bail surety was discharged. The case against him on that specific charge was over.
Right. So, just to recap the core reasons, the High Court allowed the appeal primarily because, one, there were serious questions about the first wife's motives due to the massive delay and post-divorce timing of the complaint, the whole mala fide aspect.
Yes, that was noted as a significant factor regarding the facts and conduct.
But two, and arguably the knockout blow legally, was that the original trial court simply didn't have the proper legal authority, the jurisdiction to hear the case in the first place.
Exactly. That jurisdictional error rendered the entire initial proceedings invalid. A nullity in the eyes of the law.
This case really underscores how vital it is to follow the precise legal procedures, doesn't it? It's not just about what you're arguing, but where and how you argue it according to the rules.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that the law often prescribes very specific ways things must be done. Taking procedural shortcuts or ending up in the wrong forum, even unintentionally, can completely undermine a case, irrespective of the underlying merits or grievances. Doing it the right way, as defined by statute, is paramount for legal validity.
Which leaves us with something to chew on, doesn't it? What does this case really tell you about that balance between seeking justice for a perceived wrong and the absolute necessity of following the procedural rules, like court jurisdiction, that actually allow the legal system to function properly?
It's a critical question. How can errors like this, purely procedural errors about which court hears a case, impact the administration of justice more broadly? It makes you think about the importance of getting those foundational legal structures right, doesn't it?
It certainly does. A lot to consider there about the framework itself.